Good morning, everyone. Welcome to TY Hub live. Today we're doing a live webinar with the wonderful RNLI on water safety. So if you're watching this through the TY Hub app, you'll be able to chat in the comment box that's beside us. So just ask the teachers if you have any questions at all, just to pop it up there. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can do the same thing. Just pop in a comment and it will come up here, and we will surely get back to all the questions throughout the webinar. At 11 o'clock, we will be taking a short break just to allow for some class changeovers with teachers and take a short little break for yourselves. And during that time, we will be showing a little video on 200 years of the RNLI. Now, if you're ready and you're comfortable in your seats for the next hour, I'm going to introduce you to Killian and Finn from the RNLI.
Hello, Fiona.
Morning.
Morning.
Morning, guys. So all the students here are from all across Ireland, and they're ready to have a listen and get involved in the mapping out of the buoys.
Great.
Boys.
First of all, hello, everyone. I'm going to share my screen in a few minutes to do a little bit of a PowerPoint. But before we do that, I have a quick task for every school, if that's all right. If they could just put into the chat bar there either the address of their school or the nearest swimming location to the school or the nearest body of water. So it doesn't matter whether you're inland in Ireland or whether you're on the coast. The nearest place that students would go pier jumping or they go swimming in a lake, just drop it in the chat there. And the reason I'm doing that is I'm going to pull up Google Maps as part of this webinar today, and we're going to just have a quick look at all the waterways that people can go swimming at. I especially want to look and see where people go swimming inland. Believe it or not, in Ireland, about 60% of all our drownings every year are actually inland. So even though we're the RNLI and people would associate us mostly with the coast, we actually have four RNLI stations inland. We have two up in Upper and Lower Lough Erne, and then we have one in Lough Ree, which I'm sitting in today, down in Athlone, and then we have one in Lough Derg. So we're the charity that saves lives at sea, and in a few minutes I'm going to talk through a little bit about the charity and how it's structured to give you kind of a preference of how it works. But what I really want to do is take a look at some of the swimming areas around Ireland. So Finn or Fiona or Ellie, who's helped me there, if there's any comments go in, will you let me know? But in the meantime, I'm just going to go into present mode here. So let me just check technology.
So we've already got a few schools checking in there and letting us know where they are. So just give them a little bit of time.
Great. Do you want to shout out one of them to me?
Yeah, so we have Arklow by the Sea in Wicklow, and then we have Dungarvan. Also by the sea, we have Ross's Point in Strandhill Beach in Sligo. And
right, let's go to Arklow first. So zooming in there, Arklow on the east coast.
There we go.
Just for you can see that fine, Fiona and Finn, yeah.
Yeah, I've just added it there.
Yeah. So just for reference, there's Dublin. We're going down south towards Wexford, and this is Arklow. And we actually have a lifeboat station in Arklow. I'll see if I can find it. There it is. There, look. That's our RNLI lifeboat station there. It's one of many lifeboat stations we have on the East Coast. So the East Coast, I wonder that person who put it in, where do people swim? I have Arklow South Pier, and I know that there's lots of beaches and lots of options around there. So this is the East Coast of Ireland. So if I zoom out, you'll see just over here is Wales. So quite a narrow, can you follow my cursor there? Quite a narrow, what we call reach. So quite a narrow distance between Arklow and the next big landmass, which is Wales there. If I quickly zoom out and flip over to, let's say, you mentioned Ross's Point, Fiona, didn't you? So Ross's Point is here in Sligo. If I zoom out from Ross's Point, you can see that the quite a lot of ocean there between Ross's Point and the Newfoundland, Canada there as it is. The reason I show you that is the sea around Arklow is generally more sheltered than the sea around Ross's Point, just to use those two examples. So the East Coast is generally more sheltered. That doesn't always mean it's safe. And it's one of the things I want people to start thinking about on this webinar, is thinking about, where am I going swimming and is it safe to go swimming? So on big picture, or big map as it is, the East Coast would have less waves on it than the West Coast, simply because there is less sea there. There's less area for the waves to get big and to hit it. So if anybody lives on the West Coast, they'll be used to seeing, especially in the winter, massive big storms hitting the West Coast. You don't get that on the East Coast. But what you do get on the East Coast is what I call short, sharp waves that would hit into Arklow, and indeed further up to Dublin, here up in Wicklow. You get these short, sharp waves, which actually can be quite dangerous in themselves. And one of the things we've experienced on the East Coast is it's so calm for most of the year, people don't expect it to have waves. But a couple of times in the winter, it will have these short, sharp, steep waves that what we call a shore dump. In other words, the waves are breaking right onto the shore and can be very dangerous. So even on the East Coast, which is a bit more sheltered, definitely you need to be careful there. Is there any more, Fiona, with Ross's Point? Any more from around the country? So I have, this is Ross's Point here. I'm from, myself and Finn both live in Bundoran. I'm from Bundoran, just up the road, so I know this beach really well. This is a lovely beach, Ross's Point, and another location that has a lifeboat in it. If I zoom in, we should see a lifeboat somewhere here. They're not always where they should be on Google Maps, but the lifeboat's roughly around there, near the sailing club, if I can find it. Oh, it's here. There it is there. There's the RNLI lifeboat station there in Ross's Point. It's called Sligo Bay Lifeboat, and this is the beach itself. This is a lovely beach. It's actually quite a sheltered beach. If I just skip into satellite mode, it's quite a flat beach, but as you can see, it has waves on it there, and is exposed to the full force of the swell on the west coast. This beach is lifeguarded during the summer, and my colleague Finn's going to talk a little bit later about the lifeguards and how all that works. So during July and August, I believe, in Ross's Point, maybe the weekends in June as well, there are lifeguards on the beach, which makes it quite safe, and it's quite a popular spot for triathlon training and all. Nice beach to swim on, but you do need to check the weather beforehand. Have we any that are coming from inland, Finn or Fiona there? Any schools that mentioned an inland location?
I think Finn is having a tech issue. So
Oh, you're all right. Go on.
Page there. None from inland at the moment, but we did just get St. Columba's College just mentioned the 40 foot in Dublin.
40 foot, actually, that's a good one. Yeah, the 40 foot is one of the most popular ones. That's in Sandy Cove up in Dublin. We just go into it. So, and actually, this is just for reference. This is Dublin. This is Dunleary Pier here, where, again, this is like a tour of the lifeboat stations of Ireland. But again, we have a lifeboat station at Dunleary Pier. Where is it now? It's here. That's it there. It's not named on Google, but that's it. Beside the Royal Irish Yacht Club there. So that's Dunleary, and over here is the 40 foot. Super popular. Again, I'm going to go into satellite mode. You always see RT would cover this Christmas Day and any swimming events. You could have hundreds of people out at the 40 foot. Just to show you there, 40 foot's kind of almost facing north there. So as we look at this map, this is northerly up here, and this is southerly down here. And if you have a northerly wind coming in, the 40 foot can be quite exposed there, especially if you have a northeasterly wind coming in that direction there, be quite exposed. And as I said, you can get those short, sharp waves. A lot of the time, though, a lot of the year, it's an absolutely beautiful place to swim. If you have wind coming from this direction, coming from the right-hand side of the screen, this side is actually more sheltered, and if you've wind coming from the left hand side, this side's more sheltered. So again, that's a little bit about deciding where you're going to go swimming. I really encourage people to go swimming. I think it's one the great things that come out of COVID a few years ago is loads of people have got into swimming around Ireland, and think it's really changed the coastline. But you'll hear us say time and time again, you have to pick the right location, and that location is really dependent on the environment on that day. In other words, the wind, the swell, that kind of stuff. So just pick the right location. There will be, just to touch on a one, I suppose quickly, there will be a day where you decide to go swimming on the 40 foot or Ross's Point or Arklow or somewhere, and it's just too stormy, and you're just going to have to say, no, I'm not going swimming today. That will happen every winter. That will happen a few times every winter. So places like the 40 foot and Arklow on the east coast, you will have far more days than say Ross's Point on the west coast where you can swim, but you will have some days where you would have to say no to swimming. Is there any other ones come in, Fiona, that are inland?
On message to myself there, we have Kildare, Offaly and Cavan.
Let's go to Cavan. Cavan has a lot of lakes. So Cavan, County Cavan, right. So let's zoom in. Cavan is absolutely full of lakes. There's a rumor it's 365 lakes. I don't know if that was ever verified. And up in this end of Cavan, you have Belturbet. And in Belturbet, you have the River Erne system coming through. So this is Fermanagh up here. See, there's the border between Northern Ireland, Southern Ireland. That's part of it into Cavan, and down here, so there's quite a lot of lake systems, and the Erne Shannon waterway flows through it as well. If I scoot back over to this part of Cavan here, you literally have lakes everywhere. Um, Look, as I said, I do encourage people to go swimming, but it has been shown that when people are isolated, when they're away from help, away from normal swimming spots, so like somewhere where you have a jetty and you have ring buoys and you have mobile phone coverage, you are a lot safer than if you go into one of these remoter locations where there's no jetty, there's no ring buoy, there's maybe no phone coverage. If something goes wrong, there's no way to call for help. Um, so there's an awful lot of options for swimming in Cavan, but you should be very careful of the one you pick. We want to be looking for places that are publicly accessible, slipways, jetties, places where you know the depth, places that have safety signage up, and also places that have ring buoys on them. Now, a bit later on, we're going to cover ring buoys. We're going to talk about how you use them and what they're for. Ring buoys, you've all seen them at piers and rivers and canals. They are just those orange rings. Um, the idea is you throw them in and they allow someone to float. But we'll go into that in a bit more detail. No ring buoy, no swimming. That would be the kind of rule of thumb for that. The other counties you mentioned there to me were Offaly and Kildare, wasn't it? Offaly and Kildare, yeah. So these are the inland counties. That's Offaly too. Um, Not as many swimming options as in Cavan, but definitely I'm going to put in Kildare as well. But there's definitely, I know the Barrow River goes through Kildare and Athy. So there's definitely a few river options in Kildare. I'm just going to pull up. Bear with me, Barrow River Barrow. There it is. There. Yeah, so there's given the River Barrow there in Kildare. I've actually kayaked this. It's a great river, but goes all the way down through a tie down to a place called Stamullen, on through Kildare, and really nice river, but quite fast flowing in certain places. Has a lot of weirs and stuff on it. Just as a side note, really interesting old technology on that river. There's a lot of locks that are 200 years old. So that old technology before we had our nice fancy motorways in Ireland where everyone drives everywhere at 120k. We actually used to transport the goods on the locks. Locks are dangerous in terms of swimming. And people do swim in rivers. People swim in the Boyne River up in County Meath too. But again, you have to be very careful of the location you pick there, and don't ever swim in a fast flowing area. Our advice would be to swim in the lake or the sea instead. So Was there any other specific ones put in, Fiona?
Not on the inland side of things, but we do have more like around Arklow, Nuns Beach, South Beach.
Nuns Beach in Arklow. I think I know Nuns Beach. I'll just go in directly there. One's in Bally. There's a few nuns beaches, as you can see there. The nuns must have liked swimming. Nuns Beach, Arklow. Let's see if that brings it up. That's there, just north of Arklow. Yeah, I have swam there actually. That's whoever put that in. That's quite a steep beach. I think it gets deep quite quick when you go in. If it's the one I'm thinking of, and I think there's a sandbank a bit further out. That might even be the start of the sandbank there. Look, again, lovely place to swim, but really, really be careful about the weather conditions. On that particular beach, if you see strong easterlies, be very careful. It's probably not going to be a good day to go swimming. Doesn't have to be a red or an orange weather warning, by the way, but if you see strong easterlies, do avoid that. Just on the you've probably hear me use expressions like westerly and easterly winds. I'm going to zoom out and I'm going to do a little trick here just because this does confuse people and it's worth learning. When you listen to the weather forecast, you will hear the weatherman say westerly or southwesterly. I'm going to draw a southwesterly wind. So that is a southwesterly wind over Ireland. That would be our predominant wind condition. So if I'd write southwest here, um, basically what that means is the wind is coming from the southwest. Okay. If I did the opposite and I went like this, that would be a northwesterly wind. Very important to understand that. And likewise, if I go like this, that's actually an easterly wind. Okay, so when I was talking about the east coast and the most dangerous wind condition, I'm actually talking about wind coming from the direction of Wales. I do find that confuses people, and if you get it wrong, you usually have the opposite wind direction than you think. So on the east coast, you'd be thinking, "Oh, it's an easterly wind. I'm fine." That means the wind's coming from the east coast of Ireland. It doesn't. It actually means the wind's coming from the east coast of Scotland. So that's just a little side I've noticed that. Can cause a bit of confusion on it. If you are looking to do weather forecast on it, one of the best sites you can use for that, which I'll quickly drop in here, is Met, M-E-T, met.ie. If you go for which is just the Met Éireann site, and this will give you all the forecast of it going to tomorrow, which doesn't look like a great day. It actually gives you the wind speed down here. And if you start to read this every day and then you look at the weather every day, you start to get a feel of what a good day and a bad day is. This is quite windy, 38, 44. What are we in kilometers? So about 22, 23 miles an hour. That's windy. It's not at weather warning level, but it is actually quite windy. So I'm going to just show you quickly on Google Maps where I am today. Because I am inland. Now, where am I at Lone? So this is where I am. So again, another lifeboat station. We are just, yeah, crosses the point. So I'm not sure if the lifeboat's logged on it, but this is where the lifeboat is on in Athlone. So if I zoom out, this is Loch Ree in the middle of Ireland. Athlone, as you know, is right in the middle of Ireland, and our lifeboat station is up here. So it's, as I said earlier, one of our four. There it is. There, it's marked on it. It's one of our four inland lifeboat stations. So there's loads of amazing swimming locations around here. There's loads of sheltered little lakes in here. These inner lakes, as they're called here, which are actually navigable down in Athlone. There's loads of places to go, great places to go kayaking and swimming. But again, this is quite a wide stretch of water. So if you have a windy day and you're launching over here, if you've wind coming from the westerly or southwesterly direction, it can actually blow you right across the lake. So just again, be careful. But unlike a lot of our coast, quite sheltered spots in here where you can swim. Even if I bring you up satellite image here, if you go right into where we are right now, lovely slipway. That's where the lifeboat station is. Slipway there. these are all really sheltered locations. So when I'm talking about a good swimming location, I'm talking about somewhere like this with a slipway, with a car park, with safety information, and with safety equipment. The ring boys up there. Okay, so if any more drop in, Fiona, you might tell me. Um, I'm going to quickly cover a project that we did with a TY group up in Dublin. So I actually did this with 5 different TY groups from 5 different schools, I should say. And I'm going to share the link in the chat. I'll have to figure out how to do that afterwards, but I'll send the link afterwards. Basically, every dot you see here, this is Howth Pier. So again, for context, we're in just outside Dublin. This map was made by TY students, and it was basically they went around to all the houses, all the businesses in Howth, and distributed copies of this map, and they promoted it digitally online. So your school can do a project like this. This is completely free. It's just using Google Maps as a system. And what you do is you go and you click on you go see the photo over here of the ring boy. You take a photo of the ring boy, you take its GPS coordinates, you enter in the point on the map with the GPS coordinates that you've got from your phone. All you teenagers know how to do that kind of stuff. And then you upload a photo of the ring boy. And if you do that for every ring boy around the area, you will end up with an entire map of all the safety equipment in that area. A lot of the safety equipment is permanent. I'm going to talk about in a minute what happens if some of that safety equipment goes missing. But a lot of the equipment's actually permanent. So it has their own holder, so you can put it on the map. And I think these yellow ones are actually the signage as well. And then I think further down on this map, we did these yellow ones here. That was a life jacket sign. And I think we added the AFibs. There they are there, the purple ones. So where there was an AFib in Hope, see there's one and there's one as well. So you can take your local area. So let's say Arklow or Ross's Point or Athlone. And what you do is, as a group of TY students, you can go out, literally take photos of all the safety equipment, record the GPS location, come back and make one map. And then once you have that map made, you can promote that through TikTok, through Snapchat, through Instagram, whatever the 500 apps there are. I can't keep track of the apps these days. And when you do that, then what you're doing is you're learning where your own safety equipment is in your own area, but you're also promoting that knowledge and educating your local community and indeed the other classes in your school. You can do some peer-to-peer teaching on it. You're educating everyone where that safety equipment is. That safety equipment, those ring boys, when we use them, that is very much the example I like to give is it's like wearing a seatbelt in a car. You wear the seatbelt every day that you get in a car or a bus, but you don't use the seatbelt unless something goes wrong. So if you're in an accident or you have to stop suddenly, the seatbelt is going to protect you, and it's going to stop you moving forward in an accident. Well, ring boys are the same. They're there all the time on the piers and on the rivers and canals and lakes around Ireland, but we don't use them unless something's going wrong, unless someone needs help. In other words, in plain English, unless someone is drowning. So that's when we use a ring buoy. But look, even just there on Howth Pier, how many ring buoys there are and how many different pieces of equipment are in place to save people. So the county councils have put these all over Ireland, north and south, and these are everywhere. And the council have put them there in case something goes wrong. So just think about that. That all that equipment is for the day something goes wrong. If nothing goes wrong, that equipment never gets used. So that is a great thing to have, and ring buoys are one of the best ways to rescue people. Um, Finn will go into it later on. We actually do not. One of our messages is do not enter the water after another casualty, or after a casualty if they're in the water after someone drowning. If you enter the water, you yourself can end up in difficulties. So we would suggest to use ring buoys, and we would suggest to ring 999. But we go a little bit further into that in a few minutes. So just while we're on the topic of ring buoys, this is the Water Safety Ireland website. So you can actually go on to watersafetyireland.ie/ringboys, or you can go on to ringboys.ie directly. And if you spot a missing ring boy, you can actually go in. Let's go for Wicklow, and we'll pick Arklow because we were in Arklow earlier. So you pick Wicklow, Arklow, and you can say, what was the name of that beach, Fiona? The Nuns Beach or whatever it was. Put it in, and you just put a description and say, ring boy such and such missing and the date and all. Super important thing to do. If you see a ring boy missing, and I would ask every student listening to this today, if you see a ring boy missing, go on to ringboys.ie or go on to the watersafety.ie and report it missing. The county council cannot replace that ring boy until they know it's missing. In some areas, like the Liffey there in Dublin, we have had issues in the past where antisocial behaviour, where people at night who are drunk throw the ring boys in for God knows what reason. I don't know the reason. For fun, I think they do it. But what that means is that the ring boys are not available then. If something happens. And indeed, a person entered the water in the Liffey a number of years ago, and when they did the coroner's court inquest into the drowning, one of the things that was mentioned was the missing ring boys. And actually, what they've done up in the Liffey, if we've any Dublin schools listening, Fiona, there is what they've done is they've put a sensor on the ring boy. So when you lift the ring boy out of its holder, it triggers a sensor, so the county council know that that ring boy has been removed. The county council knowing that ring boy has been removed is not the same thing as the county council instantly replacing it, because that could happen at 2 a.m. and it may not be replaced. So just any students, if you see a ring boy missing, so you see the ring boy holder, but there's no ring boy in it, go onto this website. You can do it on your phone. It's all free. Put in the details, and I think it might even allow you to upload a photo. Do that and report it, and you could save a life. If you look at any of the stands that hold ring boys around Ireland, they have a little sticker on it that says "Stolen ring boy, stolen life." So never play with them, never use them unless someone's in difficulty, and always report them if you see them missing. Okay. So I'm just going to briefly talk a little bit about the RNLI. When I'm going to hand over to Finn in about 20 minutes, and Finn's going to literally go through our safety messaging in detail using a PowerPoint. But I just want to briefly talk about the RNLI and who we are, and also what we can do for you. So first of all, RNLI, Royal National Lifeboat Institution. It's our birthday soon on the 4th of March. We're 200 years old. I know I don't sound it or look it, but we're 200 years old on the 4th of March. So we have a great legacy of life-saving over the last 200 years. Our organisation is the entire of the UK and the entire of Ireland. So we're the UK and Ireland, and it's a voluntary run organisation. So of the 47 lifeboat stations we have in Ireland, all of them are crewed by volunteers. So some schools are in the local area, like Arklow and Ross's Point there, and indeed at Lone where I am. Some of those schools will probably know people who volunteer in the lifeboat. So our crews do not sit in a lifeboat station, I guess, like I am today. They don't sit in a lifeboat station and wait for an emergency to happen. They just go about their normal job. We have taxi men, we have paramedics, we have teachers, we have bankers, we have everybody from every walk of life involved in the RNLI. And when you ring 999, when anyone rings 999 and asks for help for somebody in difficulty at sea or on the water, what happens is we use a pager system. So basically, the Coast Guard would page Arklow lifeboat crew, for example, and say there's a person in difficulty off Nuns Beach. And what we would do is all the lifeboat crew in Arklow would go down, get into their gear, which is very much like the gear the guy in the middle wearing the two in the middle wearing the yellows, as we call them, the yellow and black outfits. That's our all-weather gear. That's our gear that keeps us dry when we go out in the boat. So we have to get in that gear, and we have to get on the boat, and we have to launch the boat. The time from when the Coast Guard tell us to go, we call it task. the time from when they task us to go to the time to when our boat leaves the pier, hits the water as such and leaves the pier, that is what we call our launch time. So I want you to think about this for a second. Our launch time is 10 minutes. 10 minutes is what we have committed to. So even if you see someone in difficulty and they are 100 meters from the bottom of the slipway that there happens to be an RNLI lifeboat at, it will still take us 10 minutes to get to that person because we have to get to the station, get into our gear, get the boat launched, and then get out. So being rescued by the lifeboat is not instantaneous. We're not going to be there within 1 minute. It's going to take time. And the reason I mention that is, and this is where you come in, the decisions you make. For example, if you go out in a boat this summer and you're not wearing a life jacket, that means you have less time if something goes wrong. So when you wear a life jacket, it buys you time. It keeps you afloat. It keeps you on the surface. And we, as a lifeboat crew, as a voluntary lifeboat crew going out, we want to be picking up people. We don't want to be recovering a body, not to sound too dramatic. So the decisions you make are very important on that. And also, and Finn will touch on this later, is if you are going anywhere on the water, you should have some means of calling for help. That can be a mobile phone, it can be a VHF radio, whatever it is, but don't go out on the water and not have a way to call for help if something goes wrong. Nobody plans, nobody wakes up in the morning and says, today I must call the lifeboat. That's kind of not how it works. What happens is um, something goes wrong and then people have to do it in an emergency. So I guess one of the things I'm getting you to think about, or two main points I'm getting you to think about in terms of this presentation, is actually you should have a means to float. So that's like a life jacket. And you should have a means to call for help. So that can be a mobile phone. And in fact, you can put a mobile phone in a waterproof pouch, and then you can put it in a pocket in your life jacket. If you're getting serious into sailing or boating, you might have a VHF radio. Sometimes the swim groups just use a whistle, but always be thinking, I'm going on the water. What's my plan if something goes wrong? Hopefully nothing will go wrong. Hopefully you'll have made the right decision on the day. And if you do need help, you have a way to call us for help. Quickly, for the teachers and indeed for the students in the room, if you go on to our, so if you just Google RNLI, you'll get to our homepage here. I'm just going to quickly show you, if you go in under education here, there is a fountain of resources. Ellie, who's part of our support team from our headquarters over in Poole in England, is actually on the call too. And we have amazing resources in here, and we also do educational visits. So we have about 130 people around Ireland who will come out and actually visit your schools. There are water safety volunteers. Um, and we also have activity sheets and posters that you can print. But up at the very top here, if you go into education resources and take a look, what it actually does is it breaks it down per age group. So you're all TOI students, you're all falling into the 14 to 18-year-old age bracket here, but you can download any of these. So I'm live on our website. I haven't any special login or anything. I'm just going into the age bracket that you fall into as TY, and we have some great programs in here. This rewind program is one about a girl who falls in at a reservoir. Um, a reservoir or a quarry, very dangerous locations to do anything at. She gets separated from her friends. It has a social media element in it and what people were posting. That's a great one that you can go do yourself afterwards. It's called Tale from the Edge Rewind. This is a good one too, Risky Business. We have some of the slides from it in our presentation that Finn's going to do afterwards. And there's all sorts in there. So you can go into any one of these. If I go into, for example, I'll go into Tales from the Edge, just click on it. And when you go in there, you can actually just download it there. We have a Welsh version and an English version, so you can just download it there and go through it. You don't actually need an RNLI person to do it, and there's even notes there that describes for the teachers, kind of teaching notes that assist you in delivering that. But the student can also go in as well, and all that information is all open source and all free, and it's right on our website. If you just Google RNLI and just find the section that says education. You can also request a visit certain times a year, not in December, January, but in the rest of the academic year, you can request a visit, so you can book that, or you can contact myself and Finn. We'll share our contact details later. And then these are great with the younger kids if you're having the activity sheets, and all sorts of I suppose all sorts of different little projects we get involved in. We have a good women in engineering section. Then we also have a section on our website about apprentices and stuff too. So you can actually work with the RNLI as an apprentice and train as an apprentice, because we build our own boats in our own factory over in Poole in the south of England. Um, so that website is a super good resource for people to do. You don't even have to record the 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 URL or whatever, because I literally what I do, and I like to show people this, is as simple as this. You just type RNLI and it will come up. Um, there it is there. And when you go in, at the moment, when you go in, our homepage looks like this because we're celebrating our 200 years. And then down here, there's a little orange button, which I can't press because because the sharing icon's above it. But the little orange button at the bottom you press and it brings you into the website proper. So that's great. Now, bear with me 1 second. I'm going to go out of all of these things for 1 sec. And I'm going to go into the PowerPoint. How are we doing on time there? We're okay, aren't we, Finn? We're 20 to 10, yeah, 20
Yeah.
to 11.
Killian, I just shared the link there for the RNLI education in the
Great.
comments section. Do you want me to share the mapping link as well?
Yeah, I'll send it over to you. I'm just a bit weary of going out of the the system. So, just give me 1 second and see if I can. I think I might have to do that, Fiona. I might have to stop sharing. I don't want to stop sharing, so
Yeah, you
I like to
actually
share.
you did send it to me in the email, so I'm gonna just
Yeah. Well, or Finn or myself will drop it in.
yeah,
Drop it in
perfect.
later.
Well,
Yeah.
any links that are mentioned throughout this anyway, it'll be up on the RNLI page on the web on TY Hub. As well. So when this will all be lovely recorded and shared afterwards. So in underneath the description, we'll have all the links.
Yeah. So give me 1 second here now to, as usual, my mouse will not pay. Give me 1 second. Sorry, my mouse has decided to just stop working. Yeah, I'll have to display like that. Sorry, I can't make it big screen. It's to do with the sharing. No, it won't do it because we're sharing. It's all right. Can you still see that, Fiona, right there? It's done Leary Lifeboat up.
Yeah, you're clicking through the slides there, Killian.
Yeah,
You're all good.
yeah. Sorry. So sorry I can't make it bigger there. I can't get it to go full screen because just the way we're sharing at the moment. But there, I got it to work. This is our Dunleary lifeboat there. See the 14 on the side of it. That means it's 14 meters long. This is what we call an all-weather lifeboat. You can see actually the famous smokestacks in the background there down at Poolbeg in Dublin. This is in Dunleary. We have two boats. We have this, and then we have a small 5 meter D class boat. So that's just to give you a feel of our equipment and what's on the coast and what can go out. As I said, we've 47 stations in Ireland, but the Dunleary one is what it's called a dual station. Has two boats. So there's an inshore boat, which is great for getting into little small coves, and then it has the all weather boat. Earlier on I said we'd 47 stations in Ireland. We actually have 238 lifeboat stations around the UK and Ireland. So if you added up every single one of those dots, you would get 238. And this also shows the different boats we have, including our newest all-weather boat, which is actually called a Shannon. It's named after the River Shannon. Which is an amazing boat, which I wish the RNLI give me for my station in Bundoran, but that hasn't happened yet. But it is literally like the space shuttle. It's fly by wire. You drive it by a joystick. It's brilliant. So it's a very big organization, 35,000 volunteers over the UK and Ireland. We have boat crew, we have fundraisers, we have water safety people like myself, Finn and Ellie, and we have public relations, we've media people. Huge organization with great training and great resources there. For all the young people listening, when you turn 18, you can join the RNLI. To be operational on a boat, you do need to be relatively close, within a few minutes of a lifeboat station. So that school from Ross's Point and from Arklow, you're very close to a lifeboat station, but you can see on the map there where all the lifeboat stations are and how that works. So yeah, that's just a little bit about that. Now, this is more or less covered on our website, rnli.org/safety, our youth education. I already brought you into the website. My advice, just go RNLI into Google, and then in the drop-down menu, pick the education section, because everything's already in that section, and you can download from there. But these, on our left-hand side here, these are our key 4 safety messages. So if you're to ask us, what are our 4 safety messages? They're stop and think, stay together, float, and call 999. Now, as Finn goes through the PowerPoint of the actual safety messages over the next hour, we will dive into a bit of detail on some of them. Especially one I would emphasize for young people is stay together. You're all teenagers now. You're all at TYE age. 16, 17, you don't go to the beach with your mom and dad, you go with your mates, you go with your friends. And if you did that rewind workshop that I showed you on our website, that's all about young people your age going, having fun together. But when you go near water, you need to plan for going near water. And I'm not talking about going into water, I'm talking about going near water. Obviously, if you're going into water, you need to plan a whole other level. If you're going out in a boat, you need a life jacket. I talked about having a phone with you, checking the weather and all that. But even if you're going playing football or hurling or whatever it is beside a water course, you need to think ahead for the you need to be thinking about staying together and making a plan. But Finn will dive into a little bit of detail on some of them as we go through the PowerPoint. One of the last key message there is call 999. I'm going to put emphasis on call. I know I was born in the 70s, so I didn't grow up with a mobile phone. I know there's a little bit of reluctance of people to actually pick up the phone and ring. If you see somebody in difficulty, you are calling 999. You don't have to make a decision when you call 999. You have to make a report. So if you see somebody in difficulty and you're not sure they're in difficulty, you don't have to make a decision. You can still call 999. I'm at Arklow, Nuns Beach, and I see somebody and they look like they're struggling. Doesn't matter if they're struggling or not. The lifeboat will come out, or the Coast Guard. We will come out and check on them. The reason we do that is we far prefer be on the way when somebody's in difficulty in water than to be sitting back in the lifeboat station, or indeed not even be in the lifeboat station, and then we're too late to rescue someone. So we are a charity. As I said earlier, we're the charity that saves lives at sea. We would far rather be on the way. And unfortunately, when somebody gets into difficulty in water, it tends to escalate. It tends to get worse. Basically, water usually moves. Currents, winds, tides, they all move. So if somebody gets into difficulty, they're not going to be where they were when you called in 999. 10 minutes later, or 15 or 20 minutes later, when we get there, they're going to have moved, and it can be even more difficult to find them and indeed help them. Which, if you think about it, is very different than what happens on land. God forbid, if somebody has an incident, if somebody falls in the schoolyard, or on the way to school and hurts their leg, you call an ambulance. That person is going to be in the exact same location when the ambulance arrives. That's the difference between emergencies at land and emergencies at sea. Everything is moving in water, and that creates a challenge for us. Always call, make that call early, and you do not have to make the decision. Let the people on 999 make that decision. If somebody's in difficulty in water, you will ask for the Coast Guard, but don't worry, they'll talk you through all the different options on it. So, Finn, is that all right if we go? I know we're only 10 minutes away from the break, but is that all right if we go to the PowerPoint proper there for you to talk through everything?
Yeah, I'll let you. Killian has to go attend to visitors at the lifeboat station that he's currently at the minute. So I'll take over. Thank you very much, Killian.
I think I've stopped sharing there. It's hard to tell. You tell me, Fiona and Finn, if
You have, Killian. Thanks so much for the first hour,
no bother.
and best of luck with your visitors at the Athlone station.
No bother, and thanks for everyone for listening to me there, and keep the questions coming. If I can jump back on in a few minutes, I will. I'm actually meeting the Gardaí and the Road Safety Authority and the Fire Brigade here at Athlone Station today, so I'm double booked. So, but I'll leave you with Finn and Ellie. Thank you very much.
No problem. Thanks a lot.
Okay, guys. Can you see a slide that says risky business there? And somebody staring over the edge of the abyss. Fiona, can you see that on my on the screen? Silence.
Can you not hear me? Yes, no, it's there.
Brilliant, brilliant. Okay, well, I'll carry on from here, guys, and we'll run up into 11 o'clock, at which point you'll take your 5-minute break. So the reason why we are here speaking to you today is because young people are our high-risk group. Because we know when we analyze our figures from water-related incidents or deaths, drownings, and even across the world, we see that young people are particularly affected, particularly young males. So much so that the World Health Organization has put drowning amongst youths as a priority to prevent that, because it's one of the leading causes of death in that 16 to 25 age cohort. Because if you think about it, at your age, you're very healthy people, okay? You're not affected by long-term illnesses. Something traumatic in your life is going to come from an accident. And where we see that a lot of the accidents are in water. And Killian has alluded to it earlier. Water is unlike land, okay? If something happens to you on land, you have a bit of time, okay? Your life isn't at threat unless you've had a really serious traumatic injury. Whereas something in the water, when it happens, if you have a minor medical event, that can escalate quite quickly because you need all your faculties to be able to survive in water. So think about when we talk to our close at 12 o'clock, I'm going to be teaching you survival skills, okay? Because in water, we can't survive unless we apply certain principles and certain physical techniques. Now, risky business is the headline there. Risk-taking is what we deal with the effects of whenever we're called out, okay? It's good to take risks in life. That opens up our world to new experiences. Traveling is a really good example of that. Traveling both within our own country and abroad really helps broaden your mind, new experiences, meeting new people. Those are all really good things, okay? If we want to embark on a new career, so maybe we have to take a risk and we're changing our career, or we're studying a subject we've never studied before, or we're taking up a new activity, taking up a new art form, learning a new language. These are all things that will enhance our life. There's a little bit of risk because we're venturing into the unknown, but we kind of go, well, you know what? This is going to improve our lives so much that's worth taking that little bit of risk for. And actually, the risk isn't that great, okay? It's when we think about, is there a threat to life? Mostly we can reduce that risk right down and go like, well, yeah, look, if I travel to, let's say, Australia, which is a pretty safe country, if I look up, do a little bit of research, know where I'm going, I've reduced the risk to my life, pretty much down to minimal, and it's worth taking that risk, okay? Where we have the other end of the scale is, you can see on this slide here, somebody is sat over the edge of a cliff looking down. There's turbulent water underneath, there's loads of rocks, there's loads of danger underneath there, and you kind of have to say to yourself, well, what am I actually getting from this? risk versus reward. Okay, I've got that momentary thrill of sitting on the edge of the cliff. But in actual fact, if something did go wrong, the consequences are very, very high. So risk versus reward there, you're much higher on the risk scale versus the reward. Let's look at some of the reasons why we take risks. Maybe it's to impress our friends, so you don't get left out. Peer pressure because you're bored, for the adrenaline rush, so I can add a photo to my Instagram account. I'm young and invincible, rebel against what I'm supposed to do, feel good and reap a genuine reward, look cool. Okay, there's lots of social pressures there, little voices in our head that are coming into our decision-making process as to whether we are going to go ahead and do something. What I'm going to show you is some of the longer-term effects of a poor decision-making in certain accidents that have happened around the coast, and for young people, potentially life-changing. This is an example of a student, Jack Kavanagh, who's really, really experienced sports person in the water. He was a windsurfer, a surfer, actually a trained lifeguard, and he was just on holiday in Portugal, just between his first and second year at university. And he was just with his mates on the beach and just decided to jump in and have a swim. But unbeknownst to Jack, just off the shore, there was a submerged rock, and he dived headfirst into it in really shallow water. It looked clear from the shore, looked clear from the beach. And as a result, he suffered quite traumatic spinal injuries, and he's unable to walk for the rest of his life. Really inspirational guy, hasn't let it define him in any way at all. And he's become really active on social media. He was on Tommy Tiernan's show last year, speaking up and sort of saying, like, look, even when you have these accidents, you can still forge forward with whatever dreams you may have. And he indeed went on to finish his pharmacy degree. But the headline there in the paper, it certainly isn't the life that I planned, but it's the life that I have. So, it was just a moment in time where just that little bit of risk taking, it was a 5-10 second process where I go, okay, I'm just going to jump in. It's a nice day. Beach looks clear. And then he had this accident that affected the rest of his life. We had really nice weather about 2 Septembers ago. 2 teenage boys went for a swim up in County Derry at a lake. It was one of those Indian summer days that seem to happen whenever the schools start up again. And they jumped in to cool off. One of them got into trouble. Another one tried to swim out and help his friend, and they both ended up drowning, which is quite a frequent occurrence. We call it double drowning, where the person that's drowning actually becomes so desperate to save their own life, they'll push the other person down. And unfortunately, these 2 young boys both were overcome by the conditions. So look, the message that we want to get out there is a moment for safety saves a lifetime of regret. So safety first. I know it's maybe counterintuitive on a nice day to just not run straight away into the water, or to stand at the edge of that cliff, get that shot on a really stormy day of a big wave coming to batter you. But the problem is that we as an organization deal with the fallout from those bad decisions. And those bad decisions can actually be life-changing for families or for the young people themselves. If in doubt, don't go out. So listen to those little voices in your head. No matter how much preparation you do or how experienced you are, if a swim doesn't feel right, or any particular coastal activity that you're engaging with, it doesn't feel right in your core, listen to that voice, okay? Because that's your voice of experience. There's no shame in getting out of the water straight away or not entering at all. Bear in mind that whenever you see pictures of extreme sports around the coast, I used to work for Red Bull prior to joining the RNLI, and I managed their water safety both in Ireland and internationally. We did a lot of high-profile extreme sport stuff. And what you see on the screen is completely different to what is behind the scenes. So when you see a picture of a person surfing a really big wave, there's a massive safety team behind all of that. So you're reducing the risk right down to a very, very small level, because if that person gets in trouble, there's a whole army of people there to save their life, including doctors, paramedics. We've got helicopters, we've got multitudes of rescue jet skis all in the background. Okay, so it's all about risk management. If you're just on your own somewhere and you don't know anything about the place and you're not really sure in your own ability, that's massive risk. Okay, if you're at a lifeguarded beach and it's a really nice day and the area to swim in has been signposted, that's relatively low risk. So you can engage in your activity. So that's the mindset that we're trying to cultivate. And that's what we'll explore when we come back after the break, the steps that you can take to keep yourself safe. That brings us to 11 o'clock, guys. So we'll see you back here at 11:05. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Finn. See you in a few minutes, guys.
Okay, guys, we're back at it here. And we'll move into some practical examples of how to keep safe whenever you're at the beach in the various activities that people get up to. Okay, so Fiona, are we all okay there? Am I got the green light to go ahead?
Oh, back on stage there now. You're screen sharing.
Brilliant. Okay, so we talked a little about the risk decision process, and we'll look a little bit further in that now and at the risks that you will come across whenever you go down to the water. Remembering, as I said, the whole thing about water is different to land. On land, if you're tired, not feeling well or whatever, you can sit down, take a rest. In the water, you can't do that, okay? You need to be treading water all the time to stay alive. De facto, you need all your faculties working. You need to have an ability to endure however long you're at in the water for until you've managed to get yourself back to the shore. So let's look at the things that we can do to minimize the risk to ourselves. So number one is know the risks, and we'll start with the top line there: environmental, wind, swell, rips, currents, tides, and weather. Okay, these are all things that we find overwhelm people. Okay, that people succumb in the water generally because they either underestimate the conditions or they overestimate their ability. Now, how can we reduce the risks of wind, swell, rips, currents, tides, weather, all those sort of things? Well, our biggest armor in that is to look at a forecast. Okay, so when we go on to Met Éireann, for example, we can look at what the wind, the weather is doing for the particular day and build that into our equation. Now, if we're under any of the weather warnings that we use in Ireland, yellow, orange, or red, we generally say, unless you're really experienced and know what you're doing, to stay away from the coast, okay? Whenever you see pictures of people engaged in activities at the coast that are happening under high wind or waves, they haven't got there but overnight. Okay, that's a very long process that they've accumulated all the knowledge, skills, and fitness to be able to do what they're doing. The time for you to start engaging those activities isn't on day one. That's like a very long-term process. So number one, we'd want you to be checking the forecast and making an assessment as to whether it's within your ability, your physical ability to survive on that day. Talked about the physical side of it there, your fitness, your health, any underlying medical conditions. Now, the way that you can, if you're medically vulnerable in that way, is that you would get screened by your GP to say, well, okay, well, we think it's okay that you can go swimming at a beach or swimming in cold water. You take advice from a medical professional on that. At a lower level, if you go to the beach and you're not really feeling well, like you got a bit of a head cold, you got a bit of a flu or whatever, it's great to sometimes get outside and get a bit of fresh air for a while, but that isn't the time for you to then enter the water and start engaging in a possibly really physical, tiring activity. Okay, ability, just be aware of what you can physically do, because you may be a really good pool swimmer, but swimming in the sea is totally different. It's a bit like 2D versus 3D. Okay, so in the pool, we've got the length of the pool and we've got the depth of the water. When you're in the sea, you're adding in tides, currents, rips, surf, wind. Okay, there's a lot more external factors and pressures on your body. So just be aware of your ability. In general, especially amongst young males, what we see is an overestimation of your ability. And that just may become from bravado or ignorance. Either way, it's err on the side of caution. A good example that I use is that ships and aircraft all around the world in a commercial setting have to carry a minimum amount of fuel on board. Okay, and the reason is that if they get into an emergency where they have to divert to another airport or another port, that they have enough fuel on board to be able to do that, to be able to withstand an emergency situation. Okay, so you never run the tank down to empty. Equally with yourself, you need to be thinking, have I got enough energy to not just, do this swim from A to B, from one end of the pier to the other. I need to have enough energy that if I get halfway through that swim and I'm a little bit tired, I've got to sustain myself until help arrives. Okay, or if, let's say, I'm swimming from one end of the pier to the other and the current takes me off track, and I'm struggling against the current and maybe have to swim somewhere else to get in from shore that's a wee bit further away, I need to have enough energy on board to do that. Let's look at the mental side of things. Poor judgment, so overconfidence. That again comes into what I say about overestimating your ability and underestimating the effect of the conditions. Peer pressure. Please, guys, do not encourage someone to jump off a rock or to swim further than they may be comfortable with. Whenever you're swimming as a group, you always act towards the lowest greatest swimmer in your group. So someone says, look, I'm only really comfortable to go in for a 2-minute swim or swim 50 meters. You guys don't go, oh, come on. We all want to swim further, or we want to swim for longer. Your baseline is that lower level swimmer. You're there then to take care of them and take account of how much they want to swim. You certainly don't encourage people to go beyond their boundaries, because we deal with the effects, unfortunately, of whenever people do that. It's important to remember the sea, rivers or lakes, they're not swimming pools. They have all those external factors that I mentioned earlier. So equally, you just don't go, we're going to go swimming down by the lake, down by the river at 2 o'clock, no matter what the conditions. When you get there at 2 o'clock, you may decide, go, you know what, there's an awful lot of wind today, or there's a bit more surf than what we thought there would be. Let's just play on the beach and, not go in the water today. That's the right decision to make. Remember as well that forecasts are only forecasts. They're computer generated. The most important thing is what we call a nowcast. So whenever you arrive at the place you're going to go swimming, paddleboard or canoeing, you look at it with your own eyes and you go, maybe it's too much today. I know there was good weather forecast, but suddenly like the wind has come up. That's what happens at the coast, as anyone who knows, who lives by it. You may get down to the lake and maybe there's a bit more water than there normally is. So one part of the lake is a bit deeper than what you're used to. You got to look at it with fresh eyes each time. We'll just move on here. Swimming is certainly the most popular activity that is happening around the coast at the minute, which is brilliant. As Killian said, it's a great sport to get into. But it is also where we're seeing the majority of our call-outs also. You can minimize the risks of swimming by wearing the right kind of kit. Okay, a wetsuit will give you increased warmth and buoyancy. And that means that you can maybe swim for longer, more comfortably. We're not saying don't ever go swimming. We're just giving you tips to help make that activity a bit more enjoyable and it's safer at the same time. Okay, wear a brightly colored swimming hat. Orange or pink are best. That's our advice from whenever we're trying to spot people in the water, or the Coast Guard, our colleagues in the air, whenever they're trying to see someone who may be in trouble. And take a tow float. That allows you to hang on to it if you do get tired. But all of these things also increase your visibility to other users of the water. So that might be boaters, windsurfers, because there has been, unfortunately, cases where people have collided with swimmers in the water. It's actually quite hard to see somebody in the water. Even though we're trained in search and rescue, we generally don't find the person until we're really, really close to them. Okay, and you got to remember, if a boat is traveling at speed, they're covering distance really quickly. So although they might not see you until you're a few meters away, by that stage, it's too late. So the more bright brightly colored stuff you can wear, the more chance of somebody seeing you and not colliding with you. And also, if they have to rescue you, we can spot you a lot easier. Have a means of calling for help with you, such as a mobile phone in a waterproof pouch and a whistle to attract attention. Okay, I'll talk a little bit about the mobile phones because that's the most popular means of communication these days. Thing to remember about them is that in a waterproof pouch, they are quite difficult to operate. Okay, so if you are behind a touch screen, you need to have practiced how to use the mobile phone in that waterproof pouch. Now, there is shortcuts on Android phones and Apple phones. On the Androids, it's pressing the power button 5 times quickly. And on the Apple phones, it just depends on what certain model you have. You have to look at the software grade that you have. Okay, now that's great because that means that you can do that, you know, even whenever the phone's difficult to access. And it's worth, just from a personal safety point of view, when you're out on a night out, let's say, and maybe you don't feel comfortable in a certain area or whatever, if you're familiar with how to dial 999 quickly using those methods, that could maybe save your life on land. Just a quick point on swimming gear. Whenever you are using those tow floats, we have had quite a lot of false calls with good intent, as we say, where these floats have washed up and there hasn't been any phone number on them. So we have to assume that somebody is lost at sea until we can establish otherwise. So it's a good idea to put your phone number on them and ICE number, which is in case of emergency. Okay, so if we can't get a hold of you, we can get a hold of your emergency contact and try and ascertain, is this a real distress situation or not. Equally, if you go to the beach and you go for a swim, make sure to take all your gear with you whenever you leave, because whenever we come across gear that has been left abandoned at the beach, we have to assume that people have gone swimming and haven't returned for whatever reason, and we have to launch all the lifeboats and helicopters. That's the right thing to do until we establish otherwise, and we won't do that, stop doing that. But if you can prevent us from launching unnecessarily, you may help save somebody's life who does need those emergency resources. They are finite around the island, okay? There may be someone with a legitimate emergency who needs that lifeboat or needs that helicopter. So anything you can do to help us in that regard is always appreciated. Prepare before you go swimming, okay? We'd always, the easiest thing to do is choose a life-guarded beach, okay? So Killian talked about it there earlier there. In July and August, when most people visit the beach, there are around the counties and inland life-guarded swimming areas, okay? That's the easy way to keep yourself safe. If there isn't one available at the spot that you're going to go to, make sure you know any hazards that are at the beach. And the way you could establish that, there may be signage from the council telling you where any rips are or any deep water spots. Go with a buddy and have a plan of where to enter and exit the water with alternative exit points identified. So I talked about maybe an example there that you're maybe going to swim along the shore. That's always good. Swim within your depth, swim along the shore so that you can get out where if needs be. But if you're swimming along a part of the shore that has rocks, let's say, that you can't get out halfway along, if you get tired, that's not a very good plan, okay? You want to be swimming somewhere where you can, like, you know, if you get halfway overcome for whatever reason, you can take a break or exit the water. Check your spot, know how to spot rip currents. This is, all beaches have rips, okay? And generally, the larger the surf, the larger the rip. The rips may be so small that they'll not even cause you any trouble, okay? But the way that you can identify it is, there's a saying, green is mean and white is right. So if you look at this picture, you'll see in the middle of it, the green water, there's no waves breaking. Now, you may think to yourself, well, geez, that must be the safest water because there's no waves breaking there. But the reason that there's no waves breaking there is because the rip is so strong that it's running out to sea and stopping the waves breaking. So actually the safe water is where the waves are breaking, because if you're there, the waves are going to constantly push you back to shore. So it's just a little counterintuitive thinking there. Again, there may be signage on the beach, as we have in Bundoran here, telling you where those rips are. Now, that can be a rip that's always naturally present 365 days of the year, which is what we have in Bundoran here, and that will be due to geographical features such as a river, which we have running out to sea. But remember, rips are also dynamic. They can move up and down the beach all the time. They're ever changing. Again, the best defense is being at a lifeguarded beach, because they will move the flags if they think that suddenly the area has become dangerous, or they might even red flag the beach completely, just going, okay, today is not the day to go swimming. So be aware that the areas where the rips can change. But what we're going to teach you in the next slides is what to do if you do get caught out in a rip. The principal action there is that you're going to swim parallel to the shore. That'll break you free of the rip. Or you may just go with the rip, because eventually they dissipate out to sea, just behind where the waves are breaking generally. Okay, when you reach that point, then you can move into what we call the float to live position. Raise your hand and call for help. If when you swim in parallel and you get yourself free of the rip and you feel able, you can then swim back to shore, or the waves will push you in, or again, you'd move to that float to live position, raise your hand and call for help. But we'll cover that later. Always check the weather forecast, tides and sea conditions before you set off. You know, again, obviously, if there's a really strong onshore wind, or there's large waves forecast, or we're under weather warnings, those are all kind of red flags to not go to the beach and make some plans to do something alternative for the day. That's just another aerial overview. You can see there's the area of green water. As I said, green is mean, white is right. The rip is so strong it's stopping the waves from breaking. So that's where you would end up if you get caught out in the rip. But if you swim parallel to the shore, that'll break you free of its grasp. Or you can just go with the rip. Don't try and fight it. Don't try and swim back to shore against the rip, because you'll never beat it, however strong a swimmer you think that you are. So the rip running out to sea here, that's the person has got out the back behind the waves, and they've put their hand up, signaling for help. They haven't struggled and tried to swim against the rip, because that's when people get tired and that's when they drown, or they swim parallel to shore. Now, tidal cutoff. It's really important to know the tides. We get a lot of call outs in the Dublin area, particularly for the Dunleary station, where people go for a nice walk on the beach at low tide. So this top slide here shows people walking out to this lovely island at low tide, and then 6 hours later, high tide comes in, and suddenly they can't walk back across that causeway. So you want to know the tide times for the day if you're going for a walk along the beach. On our beaches in Donegal, you can park on some of them, and quite frequently what we get is people park on the beach, go off for a walk, decide to walk a little bit further than they planned, come back, and the car is swimming around at high tide. Very expensive day out at the beach. For the sake of a few minutes, if they'd gone on a website and checked the tide times, they could have saved themselves an awful lot of trouble. Okay, we don't mind being called out for people getting cut off by the tides. That happens. But again, you can appreciate that whenever we have to use helicopters or lifeboats to rescue you in that scenario, when for the sake of a few minutes, you could have prevented that accident happening, we're using up vital resources that may be needed elsewhere for an accident that couldn't be prevented. We'll talk very quickly about the effects of cold water shock, because that is primarily, again, one of the main problems in Ireland, the reason why people get into trouble. Our waters in Ireland are 15 degrees or less most of the year, okay? And that's the definition of cold water, 15 degrees or less. The Atlantic around this time of year is 8 or 9 degrees. The Irish Sea is about 6 or 7 typically, and inland on the lakes, you know, colder again, tends to be around 5 degrees. It all depends on the how the preceding weather. And lakes lose their water temperature a lot quicker than the sea, and equally heat up faster in the summer. But in other words, doesn't matter what time of year you fall into Irish waters, you will have what we have termed cold water shock. Okay, some people have it to a greater degree than others. For some, it can be life-threatening. For others, it just can be a mild, sudden intake of breath. Okay, but we'll teach you how to minimize the effects of it and survive it. The best example of it is whenever you go for your shower in the morning and you turn it on, you're expecting lovely warm water and you get a dose of cold water. Okay, immediately the first thing that you'll do is go, you have that big gasp reflex, a big sudden intake of breath. Okay, it's important to realize that isn't breathing. So that's immediately an interruption to your breathing. Breathing is breathing in and breathing out. You taking a sudden sharp breath in suddenly disrupts your normal breathing cycle, which if you're standing in the shower in the bathroom is uncomfortable. If that happens when you're in the water or in the rivers or the lakes, that then becomes life-threatening because it leads to a rise in your heart rate, a rise in your blood pressure, and can lead in an inability to swim, and that leads to a cessation of life. So know the risks. Cold water shock happens if you fall into the water, and you're going to say to me, well, I don't plan on falling into the water. Well, around half the people who drown, slip, trip, or fall into the water don't expect to get wet. As Killian said earlier, no one gets up in the morning and says, I'm going to call the lifeboat today. We have a vast range of casualties that we come across in our own lifeboat station in Bundoran. I would say that the one thing that's common to them all is that no one expected to have an accident that day. So you can't say that this is never going to happen to me, because for at least half the people who have accidents around the coasts, rivers and lakes in Ireland, they all said the same thing. The effects of cold water shock, very quickly here: gasping, hyperventilating, difficulty holding your breath, a feeling of suffocation, and this can overwhelm you quite quickly. Heart and blood pressure, blood vessels constrict, increase in heart rate and blood pressure, tachycardia for the medical students in the room. Mental and physical effects: disorientation, panic. That's the big one. That's what leaves people in trouble at sea, in the rivers and lakes. That's what leads to drowning, is panic. An inability to think clearly, evaluate your problems, carry out a plan of action, helplessness, lethargy, and a freezing of action. So like you become uncoordinated. If you're uncoordinated, you can't swim. Medium term, again, we talk about that incapacitation, rapid cooling, swim failure. Core temperature, you initially get the cold water shock, can lead to swim failure. Then you've got immersion, hypothermia, or post-immersion collapse. Now, that was cold water shock. We're going to talk very quickly about hypothermia, because that's a totally different thing. Okay, cold water shock happens very rapidly. Hypothermia is a much longer affair. Generally, it does vary person to person, but generally takes around 30 minutes before you become hypothermic. So a good rule of thumb there is when somebody says that they're hypothermic, that means that they're actually just pretty cold, okay? Because if you're actually hypothermic, you won't be able to speak, you won't be able to coordinate. The important thing to remember about hypothermia is it is a medical condition, and that person does need medical help to recover from it. Okay, so if you suspect that someone's hypothermic, you need to be calling 999 straight away. Hypothermia can set in after someone's come off the water. A good example to try and get it in your head, the difference is a lot of people in Ireland that suffer from hypothermia are hill walkers, mountain walkers, okay, where they've been exposed to wind and rain for a very longer time than, let's say, just going in and out of the water quickly. Okay, so how will you survive that cold water shock? The way that we say to do it is float to live. And it's really simple, okay? You just tilt your head back with your ears submerged, get your arms out to your side, relax, get your breathing under control. You can lightly move your arms to help you stay afloat. Don't worry too much about your legs. Spread out into the star position. Some people's legs go up, some people stay down. Doesn't really matter. Just keep that head back, ears submerged, okay, arms outstretched, and that'll help you float. That'll help you stay alive until you get your breathing back under control from the effects of cold water shock, at which point you can like maybe raise your hand to wave for help or shout for help, and then you'll stay in that float to live position until help arrives, because that is a really good energy conserving position. Okay, you may find at some point you're like, okay, I've got it under control now. I'm a little bit calmer in my thought process. I know what my energy levels are. I know my swimming ability. I may feel comfortable to try and rescue myself and swim to shore. That's fine if you think you're able. If not, just stay in that float to live position until help arrives. Okay, I'm going to move on to another activity that's really popular around the coast, stand-up paddling. It's really sort of sprung onto the scene in the last couple of years. Again, we really love people getting outside and using the water recreationally. All we're going to do is give you the tips to help you stay safe. The main thing with stand-up paddle boards is to always wear a buoyancy aid, have a means of communication. So principally that's your waterproof phone in your waterproof phone or mobile phone in a waterproof pouch. And we say to keep that on you, okay? Because there's no point keeping it on the board, because if you become separated from the board, it's useless, okay? That needs to be on you. Never go alone. That's as one of our core principles, because if you have a medical event and you need to raise the call for help and you're, for whatever reason, incapacitated, you're not going to be able to do it. You're not going to be able to help yourself, but someone in your group might be able to do it. So that's why we say never go alone. Have the correct leash, okay? Generally, what we say is that if there's a risk of entanglement, so if you're using it in, let's say, a waterway that has a lot of pots or anchors or whatever, something like that, you'd want to use a coiled leash, and maybe like a coiled leash that's attached to your chest so that you can release it easily if you have to. But definitely what you want to make sure is that you have the leash that attaches you to your board, because your board then becomes a means of flotation. Again, check the weather and the tides. On our website, rnli.org/sup, you can see a lot more information about this. But I'm going to give you an example here of these two young women. It's known in Ireland as the Miracle in Galway Bay, and it really was a miracle. It was a few summers ago now. Beautiful August day. These two young women set out for a paddleboard in Galway, and they survived 15 hours at sea after they were blown offshore on their paddleboards. Now, the things that they did right is that they were wearing buoyancy aids and they were wearing leashes. And ultimately, that's what saved their life, because they were able to use those to stay afloat. And they also stayed together. They actually were able to use their leashes to raft the boards together. And they famously sung Taylor Swift songs overnight at sea. And it was some really bad weather overnight. And Taylor Swift got to hear about it and wrote a letter to them that she was so inspired by their story. Okay, so that was what they did right. What they did wrong was they didn't check the weather and they didn't check the tides before they set off. If they checked the weather, they would have realized there was an offshore wind blowing. So they're on the west coast of Galway. Killian was showing you earlier how to interpret weather forecasts. And an east wind, so it blows from the east. That means that it blows offshore on the west coast of Ireland. So an easterly wind will blow onshore winds, set up quite uncomfortable swimming conditions on the east coast of Ireland. But on the west coast where it's blowing offshore, then the water will look really flat like it is here in this picture. But as you get further from the shore, that wind really increases. And the danger is that you can't paddle faster than what the wind is blowing you off the shore from. And that's what happened to girls. They also were wearing some really light summer clothing. They weren't wearing wetsuits because they weren't expecting to be at sea for a long time. But as I've said earlier, sometimes we need to plan for the worst case scenario rather than what we expect might happen. Kayaking, again, lovely way to get on the water, really popular around here. Our coast is as well, in Bundoran. Similar principles apply. Have a buoyancy aid, have a means of communications, never go alone, check the weather and the tides. Another really important key information for swimming, canoeing, or paddleboarding is let someone know where you're going to, how long you're going to be, and then if you do get in trouble, you've, let's say, said that I'm going to be back at the house at 4 or 5 o'clock, and that time comes and you haven't turned up, someone knows to alert the emergency services and they can direct us on a place to start from. So that's a really good feel-safe way of keeping yourselves out of trouble. As we move into sailing and motorboating, we're going further offshore. The law in Ireland that every vessel under 7 meters, everyone has to be wearing a life jacket or buoyancy aid. And if you're under 16, you have to wear a life jacket or buoyancy aid regardless of the size of the vessel. So the difference between the life jacket and buoyancy aid, life jacket is what you may see is those oral or automatically inflated devices. They're generally a little bit more slimline than a buoyancy aid, and they're designed for non-immersion. So buoyancy aids, you would wear them whenever you're kayaking or paddleboarding because you're expecting to get wet all the time. The life jackets, when you're on boats, you're not expecting to be in the water unless in an emergency. So they can be that blow-up style where they're more compact and a bit more comfortable, and you only activate them when you need to. And because you're going further offshore and you may be out of range of mobile phones, we'd like you to carry a VHF radio that's got a much bigger range. You do need to be licensed and trained in how to use them, but the advantage about them is rather than calling one person, you'll call every ship that's in the area or every boat that's in the area that's got a radio and listening to channel 16, the emergency channel, and also the Coast Guard. And we have devices on board our lifeboats and emergency helicopters that we can track the radio signal. It also talks about there the Safe Tracks app. That's an app that's on the Irish Sailing Association's website, and you can enter your trip details in there. And whilst it won't automatically track you in the event of an emergency, whenever you've gone past the time that you've entered in the app that you expect to be back at shore, that then notifies your emergency contact. If your emergency contact confirms that you're in a distress situation, the Coast Guard can then access that information and try and work out where you are based on the information in the app. Important thing about a life jacket is know how to use it and know how to check that it's valid. And that's because it has triggering mechanisms in there that activate the CO2 cylinders. They can be automatic or passive, but you need to know how to use those and how to check that they're actually working before you set out, okay? There is some mechanical pieces involved in it. So it's not like a buoyancy aid where the buoyancy is there all the time. The life jacket does have some mechanical components to it, and you need to be able to know how to inspect those to know if the jacket's fit for use or not. They're useless unless worn, okay? The really unfortunate accidents is that we attend is where we see that there's been life jackets on board vessels, but they're floating around. They're not on the people that have actually drowned, okay? If they're there, use them. We'll touch quickly on calling for help here. Killian mentioned it earlier. Don't be afraid to call for help, because whether we're lifeboat crews or helicopters, we want to be on the way to an accident, and the best news that we can hear across the radio is the person's rescued themselves. Oh, it was a false alarm. stand down, and we return to base. We consider that a win. What we don't like to be is late to the party. Okay, so that maybe someone's been in trouble for half an hour and nobody has called it in because they're going, I'm not really sure. I don't want to get the lifeboats out unnecessarily. I don't want to get the helicopter out. I don't want to get in trouble. Okay, that isn't the decision that you have to make. If you think that you see somebody in trouble, call early, call 999 as soon as you can, because it takes a long time to launch the helicopters, to launch the lifeboats relatively if somebody is drowning. It's not like Hollywood. Things just don't appear out of the sky. There is a time lag involved. So the sooner that you make the call, the sooner the chances of a successful resolution to it. Do you need the cell signal to be 4 bars for you to be calling 999? No. If you have a contract with Vodafone, let's say, and you have no service, still call 999 or 112, because the phone will look to see if it can find any other carrier signal to make that call. Indeed, you don't even need a SIM card in a phone to call 999. Okay, they automatically will look to see, is there any carrier network that they can use. Okay, we said about the Safe Tracks app earlier. Some people talk about what 3 words to try and describe where they are. Don't rely on technology, because remember, with mobile phones, the data range is less than the voice range. So let's say, particularly when you're at the coast or in the country, you know, the amount of places that you'll have data will be less, or the range will be less than where you'll have voice. Sure, everyone's experienced that they can't get on a certain website at the beach or whatever. So always the best thing to do is know exactly where you are at, because the most important thing that we need to know is where to get help to. Again, bit of a myth buster. It's not like Hollywood. We can't track your phones as soon as you come up on the screen. Yes, we do have little bits of software here and there that can do it, but that relies on having a data connection to your phone and a lot of other variables. The best thing is if you can say with certainty where you are that day. So when it's okay to go explore into new places, but make sure in an emergency you can describe your location to us really accurately. So here at Bundoran, we have a really long beach, Tullen Strand. Okay, so that beach is about 3 miles long. So we'll need to know what end of the beach you're at. Now, if you know your cardinal points, you can say I'm at the north end or I'm at the south end. But you might just be able to say to us, well, I'm at an end of the beach and I can see a certain landmark really close to me. That'll help us identify it. In that intervening time of while we are waiting for rescue resources to arrive on site, you can use a life ring or throw bag if available to rescue someone. Killian talked about it earlier. Never enter the water yourself. I used the example of the poor fellas up in Derry, where one tried to rescue his friend, but he ended up drowning as well. And statistically, that is what's most likely to happen. When people try and save other people themselves, they end up drowning as well, because the person drowning, their actions become so desperate and so violent that they overpower that other person. Or if there's certain conditions like a rip or cold water, it ends up overpowering the both of them. Okay, the best thing that you can do to help someone if you see them in trouble is to call 999. And while you're waiting for emergency services to arrive, you can maybe talk to the person. Your voice can really reassure them and make a difference in that emergency situation. Calm them down, calm their breathing, tell them help is on its way. I've showed you how to float to live. Tell them to do that. That'll help extend their life expectancy. Tell them to roll over onto their back, get their head back, ears wet, arms outstretched, make a star shape, and that'll all bide them some time. Again, if you see a life ring or a throw bag, you can throw that to them and pull them into the bank. Try and get help to get you to do that, because it's quite hard with an average weights person, and never mind the fact that they're going to have wet clothes on and everything. Maybe there's like a stick lying around. that you can reach out and like offer them to hold on to the stick and pull them in, because most people drown relatively close to shore. Okay, the reason for that is whenever they fall into the water or go in the water, quite quickly they get overpowered. So they haven't actually drifted that far away from the shore. So you can maybe just, what we do call is like a reach and rescue. So you're merely like reaching out with a stick just to extend that meter or two to get to them and can help pull them on. You can tie two coats together and use that to throw out to them and pull them back in. Maybe there's a football lying around. You can throw that to them and they can hold on to it. Even a 1.5 liter water bottle that's just got a little bit of water in it that allows it to float, you can throw that to them. That can just buy them all a little bit of time. There's lots of little things that you can do that to help save their life without entering the water and putting yourself in danger. But remember, the power of your voice is amazing to help just calm somebody down, let them know help's on the way. That can all increase the morale, keep them alive. Looking at these ring buoys again, stand back from the edge 1 meter so that whenever you throw it in, you don't get pulled in yourself. Use voice contact to get them to roll on their back. Rolling on their back means that they will have their airway clear, but it's also easier to pull them in. Hold the end of the rope, throw the ring buoy past the casualty, okay? Because if you throw it in front of them, remember they're drowning, they won't be able to swim to it. And then you can gradually pull it in. These, again, just a reinforcement of that. If you see someone in trouble, call 999 or 112 immediately. Use voice contact to reassure them, explain how to float, throw a ring buoy to the casualty if there's one there, never enter the water. When we go to the beaches, I talked about the easiest way to keep yourself safe is to go to a lifeguarded beach. And when you're at a lifeguarded beach, the way that we show where is safe and where isn't is to have a flag system. Red and yellow flag, between those flags is where the lifeguards deem safe to swim. Okay, black and white checkered flag, that'll be indicate an area for use by surfers, kayakers, or other non-powered craft. Don't swim there because you got the risk of collision with boards or canoes or stand-up paddle boards. If it's red flag, red for danger, don't go in the water if it's red flag conditions. Guys, I started this conversation by saying that in young people, drowning is one of the big leading causes of death, okay? If I was to tell you how many people died in drowning in Ireland, and it varies year to year, but it's around about the 120 mark. If I was to say that 120 people die every year, and it's preventable, you'd want me to do something about it. Okay, and that's what us as an organization do. We call it the drowning chain. And prior to us being in this space, drowning was considered not a priority. People were just not safe. Places were not safe. People can't be taught how to save themselves or won't save themselves. And that's the drowning chain and how it was normally viewed. What I've talked about today is the measures that we put in place to try and break that chain. And you're a really important part of that now, because you know the skills to help save yourself, help save others. And most of all, you can teach those skills to someone else, or you can use them in an emergency situation to save somebody's life. That's it from me, guys. You'll be pleased to know I've left 10 minutes at the end for any questions. So I will hand it over to Fiona here to tell me if we have anything in the chat that I need to answer.
We've no questions at the moment. That was a very quick ending, so we'll give the teachers and the students some time to ask their questions, comment with their questions. The flags that you had there, Finn, the 3 flags, they're only on manned beaches, are they?
Yeah. So lifeguarding beaches, and remember, lifeguarding does happen inland as well. Okay, it's done on Ireland. It's done on a county by county level. So you just need to go to whatever county you're visiting or living in and find your nearest lifeguarded beach. Yeah. Now, as Killian said, they're lifeguarded all the time in July and August, in the shoulder season, as they call it, June and September. They're done at weekends. Now, there is sometimes Murphy's Law that September in Ireland tends to be good weather when everybody goes back to school. And there has been a move by some councils that whenever they see, like, for instance, last year in Donegal, we had a really bad run of events. Come September, first week of September, the good weather brought everybody to the coast, and they decided to extend the lifeguard season until the good weather passed. But you know, your first point of call is your county council website, and try and find out the lifeguarded beaches in your area. Irish Water Safety, they also administer lifeguards training in Ireland, and they've got a whole heap of information on there about how to stay safe at the beach also. But primarily, your first point of call is the County Council website. That'll show you where your lifeguarded beaches are. And in Northern Ireland, if you're ever visiting there, the RNLI, we run the lifeguard service in Northern Ireland and England, Scotland and Wales. But again, it's done on a council level. So you can go into whatever appropriate council website there is, or the RNLI's website, and see wherever your local lifeguarded beach is. A really good resource in Ireland is beaches.ie. If you go on there, you can type in the name of whatever beach you're going to and see as it come up there, and it'll give you a list of the facilities, but also the tide times for the particular day, and a link to the weather forecast for that particular beach from Erin.
Okay, there's a beach up the north side of Dublin, up around Skerries, there where the tide goes really, really far out for quite a lot of the day, certain times of the year, and then it comes up really, really close to the edge as well, quite quickly. So when you were talking about the tide changing, it is really, really important. There's a beach in Sligo as well that we happened to go to a few years ago, and the water just came in really, really quick. Is there a difference like in tides, so that there's like a quick tide or coming back in, where it takes really, really long time to go out, but it comes back really, really quick? Is there certain areas in Ireland that this is an occurrence, or is this just something that happens everywhere?
Okay, very, very quickly, because tides is a massive, massive subject, and I'm having to do very light touch on all of this. But frequent question I get asked at the beach is the tide coming in today? It's like, yeah, tide comes in every day, 365 days a year. In fact, it comes in twice a day. Okay, so generally on this island, and for most of the world, we have what we call semi-diurnal tides. Okay, so in a 24-hour cycle, there will be 2 high tides and 2 low tides, and those are generally 6 hours apart. So there'll be 12 hours from high tide to high tide, 6 hours from high tide to low tide. Okay, it's a little bit more than that, but just take it that it's about 6 hours. Okay, and then the tide varies every day. So tomorrow, the tides are going to be totally different tide times, and they're going to be totally different tidal levels. Okay, so they might that the tide comes in at high tide, and they might that it falls to at low tide. Okay, so day to day, it generally transitions by an hour. Okay, so for instance, high tide today in Bundoran is around 3 o'clock. So I know that the next high water will be around 3 a.m. In the next 12 hours. But in that next day, the next high water will be at 4 p.m. So the high tide is at 3 p.m. today, and the high tide tomorrow is at around 4 p.m. Okay, so it varies by an hour each day. Mm-hmm. Now, we'll bring it back to what you were saying about how far the tide comes up and the rate at which it does. Now, I said that the tide times vary every day. Also, the tide heights vary every day. And the reason for we have tides is because of the relationship between the sun, moon, and the earth, the gravitational pull that the sun and the moon exert on the earth's bodies of water. Okay, principally the moon. Okay, the sun does have an effect, but it's principally the moon. Now, we know that our moon has a lunar cycle. For anyone that's into their astrology, don't worry, I'm not going to go there about why we all go a bit crazy on full moons and new moons. But in a full moon and new moon scenario, which happens every 2 weeks, the gravitational effect of the moon is greater. So we know that in those periods, we'll have bigger tides. And what we call those are spring tides. Some parts of the world call them king tides. And you might hear someone, you know, like in Australia, for instance, they'll say, oh, yeah, it's a king tide, mate. We call them spring tides. And that means that we have a higher high tide and a lower low tide. So, for instance, you said there's sometimes places where the water comes up really, really high. That'll be because it's during a spring period. Okay. So, right. Let's say, for instance, we're on the springs now. That'll generally last for about a week. And then next week, whenever the moon's waning, as they say, we'll have what we call neap tides, which means that we have a slightly less high tide, so it won't come up as far, but our low tide will be slightly greater. Okay, so the actual tidal range is smaller. So we have a smaller high tide and a lesser low tide. As opposed to spring tides where we've got a really high tide and, you know, a really low tide. Now, obviously in spring tides, that speed at which it can come in and out because the tidal range is greater will be stronger. And that's generally where we see a lot of people get caught out, okay, in those spring tides. So the main message is that the tides vary every single day. That's why you've got to check them every single day. And that's why you've got to know quite a lot about the tides before you make an informed decision. Most people can't make that informed decision. So that's why I always say, go to a lifeguarded beach, or maybe, you know, go to somewhere where you're doing activities that are instructed or under supervision, or you're taking advice from a surf shop or an outdoor education provider. Now, remember, tides only apply at the coast, but water levels inland can vary also with our weather. So if you're swimming at a river or a lake, be aware that whenever it's hit periods of high rainfall, that's going to increase flow on the river. That's going to give more water potentially at the lake. So it might be deeper than what you expected. Equally, whenever we're under periods of good weather, there might be less water because of evaporation. So when you're running into that pier and off that pier and expecting to land in, you know, loads of deep water, it might not be. So always check your depth before you go in. That goes for the sea or inland. Guys, that's brought me to close to 12 o'clock there. I hope I haven't blinded you all with science as we depart. Please be safe around the coast, but enjoy it. You know, that's our message. Everyone that's involved in lifeboating loves the sea, loves the rivers, loves the lakes. The ways that we show you is how to do it safely. If you go on our website, rnli.org/safety, all those tips that I've given you are all there. Thank you so much.
Super, Finn. Thank you so much. And tell Killian, we'll tell Killian later that thanks so much for the first hour.
I'll tell Killian nothing. I'll take all the credit.
You'll find out about it eventually. Everything that you discussed there today will be up on the description as well, links and everything. And teachers can contact their local RNLI through to come to the school to do some talks, just not certain times of the year. And hopefully we can do some more webinars and in the future and get the message out there to everybody. So just be safe around the water. It is coming to that better time of the year. Hopefully we'll have a lovely April, May, June, July and August and September compared to last year. Would be fantastic. So enjoy the weather, enjoy the water and stay safe. Thanks a million.
Thank you, guys.